From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN Noon News.
Good afternoon and thanks for joining us on the Noon News. I'm Diane Parker. Miller has our forecast, plus heartbreaking news as a 2-year-old Montana girl is run over and killed in a tragic accident. But first, our top story. All charges have been dropped against each of the 7 protesters arrested at the state capitol back in April during demonstrations in support of Representative Zoe Zephyr. MTN senior political reporter Jonathan Ambarian reports.
In April, 7 people faced misdemeanor trespassing charges after law enforcement removed them from the state House chambers after a disruptive protest that temporarily stopped legislative action. Now, the Lewis and Clark County Attorney's Office has moved to dismiss those charges. The protests grew out of the dispute during this year's legislative session between Democratic Representative Zoe Zephyr of Missoula and House Republican leadership. Speaker Matt Regier repeatedly refused to recognize Zephyr, a transgender woman, to speak on the House floor, after Republicans claimed she violated rules of decorum with her criticism of lawmakers who supported a bill banning gender-affirming procedures for transgender youth. During one House session, Zephyr's supporters disrupted legislative business, shouting and chanting "Let her speak" from the gallery. Regier stopped the session and ordered the gallery cleared, but many demonstrators remained. Law enforcement eventually went through and arrested 7 people who refused to leave. Their cases were assigned to Lewis and Clark County Justice Court. But this week, the court accepted motions from the county attorney's office, calling for the charges to be dismissed without prejudice. The motion said dismissal is in the best interests of justice. Zephyr released a statement on social media, calling the decision a victory for democracy. She said to the protesters, quote, "I am grateful for your dedication to democracy and overjoyed to see that the charges against you were dropped." Regier told MTN he was disappointed to hear of the dismissals. He said he still considered the protests to be riots, and that leaving those who took part without consequences signaled an erosion of law and order. In Helena, Jonathan Ambarian, MTN News.
Continuing our coverage, the gun-toting man that led Billings police to beef up security at Broadwater Elementary School is behind bars this noon. 49-year-old Gabriel Metcalf was arrested by federal authorities charged with possessing a firearm in a school zone. He lived right across the street from Broadwater and would reportedly spend hours outside with a gun in hand. Billings police said they couldn't arrest him because he hadn't broken any state laws. But due to evidence that he carried the gun onto the public sidewalk within 1,000 feet of the school, the FBI was able to step in.
I was worried, and I was also a little sad when I heard that my child had to go to an alternative playground, but I was very happy with the school's support of the matter and their ability to keep him safe.
I do believe that the guy has a right to his choice. If he wants to bear arms, great, but he shouldn't be posted outside of a school where he can see children.
Metcalf is facing up to 5 years in prison and a $100,000 fine if convicted. In Wyoming, a group is suing the city of Cody for approving plans for a new LDS temple. A coalition called Preserve Our Cody Neighborhoods claims zoning rules were ignored by clearing the way for the temple to be built without height restrictions for its tower. The temple is set to be built at the end of Skyline Drive, named for its views of Hart Mountain. Some residents are worried a planned 100-foot tall lighted tower will take away from the scenery.
We were reluctant to file the appeal or the petition for review against the city, but we felt that we didn't have any recourse.
LDS church leaders did agree to turn off tower lights from 11 p.m. until 5 a.m. each day. And while building plans have been approved, the church has not yet been issued a building permit. A 2-year-old Helena Valley girl died Tuesday after being hit by a vehicle on private property by a family member. According to the Lewis and Clark County Undersheriff, the incident is being ruled as an accident as the girl was accidentally struck by a family member. They took the girl to meet an ambulance at the Helena Valley Ace Hardware. She was transported to the hospital where she was pronounced dead. The identity of the child has not been released. On Tuesday, Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks lifted most river and stream fishing restrictions and closures. There are currently no rivers completely closed to fishing. However, the Madison River from the confluence with the Jefferson River to Warm Springs Bridge and the Sun River from Muddy Creek to the Highway 287 bridge are still under hoot owl restrictions. That means no fishing on these rivers between 2 p.m. and midnight. And that's a look at some of the day's top stories.
Some areas seeing a lot of smoke today. We'll tell you about that with the main forecast coming up here in just a bit. But first, what's going on across the U.S. Weather headlines for the 48s. Midwest to the Gulf Coast, we have dangerous heat continuing, but we do have some relief finally on the way for some by this weekend. But look at those highs today. Omaha, Kansas City, St. Louis, Chicago, there in the heartland, triple digits. Absolutely brutal temperatures there. Lower Great Lakes, Central Appalachians, we're looking at severe thunderstorms and flash flooding possible through tonight. And the Central Great Basin to the Central High Plains, scattered flash flooding possible through tomorrow. Here locally, we've had a cold front come through. You can see a lot of smoke out there in spots. Who's going to be impacted the most for the next couple of days? Let you know the main forecast coming up.
You see construction of new apartments and homes all over Bozeman, but one thing missing is affordable housing. Our Edgar Cidio learned about a new project aimed at filling that gap.
The high cost of living in Bozeman and low housing availability has driven many people in town to live in campers on the streets of Bozeman like the one behind me. Now, the city of Bozeman has been looking for solutions as to how to fix this housing crisis. One option that they've had is to build more affordable housing units like the one behind me. Now, this empty plot of land could soon look like the one behind me.
Bozeman needs all housing types for all households.
According to Zillow, the average price of rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Bozeman is around $2,200 per month. But the city hopes to bring more affordable housing online.
5-story new construction project. It's 155 units. That is really geared towards working families.
The city approved a project that is slated to be built behind Kenyon Noble. It will see rents within the 60 to 80% of average median income, meaning that rents for a one-bedroom apartment could hover around $1,400 when they open up.
We're going to do 50 years of affordability for this project, and so that means there will be rent caps.
The Airleaf Apartments is a development that brought 96 units of affordable housing online last year. David Fine, the city's economic manager, says that they now have just under 550 proposed units across the city. But even with those, there's still a lot of catching up to do.
We know, though, that we're just behind in terms of overall housing inventory.
Fine says after the city commission doubled their budget to $2.5 million to help fund affordable housing projects, it could give developers more incentives to build affordable housing.
In this case, it's really hard to make low-income housing tax credit projects pencil without some other sources of incentives.
Now, construction on this project should start up in the next couple of months with people moving in sometime by 2026. In Bozeman, Edgar Cidio, MTN News.